I'm sitting down right now with Aodhan King. We're about to have a great conversation about creativity, songwriting, the culture of worship in the local church, and maybe some of the things God's doing in the worship culture around the world as well. I think you're going to love this. You might want to just hover your finger over that share button right now because it's going to bless someone else as well. Well, welcome to Canada.
Thank you.
Glad that you're here. You landed like hours ago.
Hours ago, midnight, 1 a.m.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Man,
It's a good story.
Yeah. Yeah, you get stories on planes, that's for sure.
Yeah.
It's funny when you travel a lot, all your stories are oriented around planes.
I know.
So in a social settings, like you get one.
Yeah.
Because if you want, then go. And then this other day I was on a plane. You're like, someone's like, your life doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I know.
How many planes are you on these days though? Like, it feels like you're kind of everywhere.
Yeah, a lot. We were doing, like, pre-COVID, though, was because we were doing Sydney, America, back and forth, up to 10 times a year.
Okay.
So it was a lot of airplanes.
Yeah. You just sleep when someone instructs you that it's time.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm not good, though. Like, I wish I had that. I could just close my eyes and fall asleep.
Okay.
I don't have that.
What's your routine then? How do you power down?
I don't know. I don't know if you have any tips.
The new art of podcasting, it seems,
the
has now become your way.
But I don't know if that's causing me to have more rest or to have more stress. I haven't decided yet.
I find that like cross section is actually pretty relevant. Some things that we do, because we're stressed, lead to rest, or vice versa. Some things like I wanted to just find some rest, and then all of a sudden it becomes this burden.
Yes.
How do you balance that with like creativity? Because at some point you're like, I'm gonna be creative because it's just all these juices flowing, and then the precedent is set. Aodhan writes banger songs, and all of a sudden, there's people like, hey, so when's the next project, and when's the next creative thing? And you're like, that was supposed to be my rest thing, and now I'm stressed out by it. How do you handle that?
It's a weird like paradox because I think I have noticed that when I have the most rest is when I'm doing what I love to do, which is writing songs.
Yes.
But then if there's pressure attached, this needs to be good, or this needs to work in church, or this needs to move somebody. Then it's not rest anymore.
Right.
And so I have to like trick myself into not thinking about the outcome almost, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's funny because lately in order to not feel that stress or that pressure, I won't write. But then I find that I start feeling restless and like angry because I'm not doing what I feel like I'm meant to be doing.
Right.
So it's a weird, I don't know. I don't really know. Yeah, I'm trying to work it out.
I love that you reference not doing something as restless.
Yes.
Because often we equate rest with inactivity. Like I'm just doing nothing.
Yes.
Back to the plane. You're sitting on a plane for hours doing nothing.
Yeah.
And you get off going like, man, I'm so restless because I haven't done anything.
Yeah.
So there is like a rest that comes in purposeful activity for sure.
I think so. Because I find that if I'm not doing anything, my mind starts wandering.
Right.
And I don't think that's healthy either. I start thinking of, and I don't know whether it's like a creative thing or not, but like then my brain starts creating scenarios and out of everything, and I'm like, stop.
Yeah.
Like I don't want that right now. So
So when you're playing music, do you find there's like a zoning in on what you're doing?
Yeah. But it takes a second. It's almost like going to the gym. Like the idea of going is always the worst. But then when you're there or afterwards, you're like, oh, that was so worth it.
Yes.
I think that's the same with the discipline of like going to the piano and writing. So I feel like I need to do that. For myself. Like I don't want to sound so like arty-farty, but like it's like I feel like I need that.
Yeah.
But sometimes the idea of going to do it, like I don't know, I can't. Because of pressure. But yeah, doing it's good.
Very interesting. What point of life did you know I'm a creative?
I think, to be honest, it was probably just during church. Like I remember when I started going to church, like the worship was so impactful to me. I remember my first experience was walking into a youth group service and kind of, I've always had loved music, but no one in my family plays music. There's been no history of music in my family, but I loved music. But going to church and feeling like music could connect me to God, who I didn't know that, that was all new to me. And I was like, wow, what is this? It's really stirring. And then I kind of felt like it became like writing songs or like even listening to worship music and like became my way of like connecting to God. And then I was like, well, if I'm connecting to God through worship music or music, I want to create music that does that for others and for me. And I never was like, I'm a creative guy.
Yeah.
Because I could always look out and go, this person's way more creative. They have their shoes off when they go to the shops. Like they have cool long hair and whatever. Like but I think now as I'm getting older, I go, actually probably like that. I guess I am creative. I think we all are. Right. God makes us creative to create. Like, so yeah.
I think some people who self-identify as creative are actually curative. It's like they like stuff. They get fired up by other people's creativity. To songwrite though, you're starting from something that doesn't exist with some pretty unique parameters. Like there's only so many chords and scales. What was that journey like? Do you remember your first song? And how it played out from there?
Yes. I never thought about the blank canvas ever, really. Like it never. Now when I think about that, it totally can overwhelm me because I'm like, how do you build something from nothing? My first song was a song I wrote called My God. It's the worst song of all time. It's genuinely so bad. But yeah, I think for me it was never something that I thought would be a public thing. I would love being at home and like I watch YouTube videos trying to learn how to play chords on the piano or play acoustic guitar.
Unreal.
And they were just like prayers. So it was like things, the parameters were, I didn't really have them because I was just like, well, I want to say that God's awesome. How do I, okay. And I just kind of learnt along the way. I never thought I'd be singing songs in front of people or people would hear the songs that I wrote. It was just my way of, I guess, talking to God. Yeah.
So My God,
it's so bad.
Do you have an audio recording of it?
I tried to look for it. I think I could find it if I really searched.
It's probably in the cloud somewhere.
It is somewhere. It was I was in a band called the Black Ties.
Okay.
So yeah, I recruited all these guys from high school who didn't know God, and then I coerced them into Christian music they didn't even know, and then all of a sudden they're at church, and so. But that was how it all started for me.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what's the process of you get a song down? Probably a pretty rudimentary recording at that point.
Yep.
First time you played for someone.
Like the first song I ever wrote.
Yeah. Or like at what? Like did you show that song to people, or was it, you got a few more under your belt first, or
yeah?
What was that like?
I kind of would show the band so I started the Black Ties band, and then as I got into like my later teens, like our youth group that were at Hillsong, one of the guys who was preaching was like, came up to me. He's like, hey, like I heard you write songs. And at this point I wasn't like a songwriter. I was like, I'd written 2 songs maybe.
Right.
And he was like, I'm doing this message next week, and apparently you have a song called For You, like about a life. It's a song about wanting to live a life for God. And he's like, I'm doing a message next week on that. He's like, would you want to jump up and sing it at the end? And I was like, okay. Like,
wow.
But I was I hated singing in front of people. Like, and I still do. And I still like get sick about it. But so I did that, and that was kind of the beginning. And then all of a sudden I was like just doing that more and more. And then, I think as I started while I was in university, I was studying like a marketing degree, communications degree. I had no idea that I would be singing. I didn't know that was going to be my life. And in fact, I had no plans for it to be. It was just what I did. I was volunteering at church, and very like, over years of just kind of being at youth group, just be opportunities to sing the songs in front of people. And so showing the songs became part of that.
Right.
And there's a lot of leaders that I had at the time that were very much like, hey, send me your songs that you're writing. Yes. So there was these pathways for that.
Yeah.
And it was, I don't think if I didn't have that, I wouldn't be here, because I think I was encouraged. There's a lot of people that saw more in me when I was, 15, 16 than I could have ever saw. Like I had no plans to ever do music. I was like, there's no way that would be something that I could do. And so I'm really thankful for all those kind of the pastors and leaders I had back then, because without them, I don't know whether I would have ever done what I'm doing.
There's still very few things more awkward than when someone goes, hey, do you want to listen to this?
Oh gosh, it's the worst.
Or the worst, they're like, hey, let me listen.
Yeah.
And then you're standing there while they're like, okay.
No, cheers. I I have a hard time still showing people's music.
Yeah.
Really hard time.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about co-writing?
Yeah.
Like the process of collaborating with someone.
Yeah.
Do you find it easier, more difficult?
I love it.
Yeah?
Yeah. It's my favorite part.
Okay.
Yeah. Because I am a pretty codependent person.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't like, and I'm also indecisive. So I need somebody who's going to help me. You know, if
Awesome.
I need somebody to like guide me.
Yeah.
And that's how I even got into it, really. I wanted help. I had these people at school, these guys I was telling you about in this band. They were all, one of them, you know, they're in the band at school.
Yeah.
They were like actually musicians. And so I would just kind of recruit them to help me write these church songs that they didn't even know what they were doing.
Wow.
So I didn't know how to play guitar at the time. And I was like, oh, can you just teach me how to play? I'd find these old like Christian songs like Rely on K or Hillsong United back in the day. I'd be like, can you just teach me, what are these chords here in this chorus?
Yeah.
I didn't know it at the time, but I was like
I want to be
slowly
able
spurring
to
them
play
on.
One Way Jesus.
Yeah. Just what are the chords of this One Way song?
Yeah.
Okay, just play those. Okay, turn off the song.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
How do I play it? And that was, so I needed
Wow.
that. So yeah, I love co-writing. I think for me, it's been the only way that I've found, like, it's the easiest way for me to finish a song. Is having somebody else there who's just like, good, that's good.
Wow.
And also I feel like I can't do it all. Like I love the fact that I write with people that are so insane and way better than me. And that has made me a better writer for sure.
So you got to be wildly open-handed. When you go, here's my idea, and someone goes, not feeling it, and be okay with that.
Yeah.
Or, awesome, let's take it this direction. And you had this predisposition to take it in another direction. Do you ever get precious with the stuff you're working on?
Yeah, I don't as much anymore.
Okay.
But yeah, when you're starting out, I think that's the hardest thing to deal with is like, how do you, because writing a song when you start, it feels like the greatest accomplishment. I couldn't believe it. I remember when I was writing my first songs, I was like, wow, like I slaved over this song for like a year. This is everything. It feels like a birth.
Right.
And then you show it to somebody and they're like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
Like, you don't understand. This is everything to me.
No, maybe you didn't hear it.
Yeah. Let me play it again. But you have learned to get better at that. I think, and even in co-writing, I think when you step into a co-writing situation, you're kind of just saying, hey, you have to be open-handed.
Right.
I think it just doesn't work. And you've got to be able to like compromise and that idea is better. And I think what helped me has been the fact that I know there's no shortage of songs. Like now I'm like, you could have 20, 30 ideas a day. Like it's never going to stop. I think I've always felt like God has got all these ideas and he's kind of just going, he's just holding them out and you can go, oh, okay. And that's how it feels like to me. It feels like he's got this bucket full of ideas that never ends.
Wow.
And we just get to pick and, I don't know.
It's super frustrating for someone who's watching right now. Like, what? You feel like the ideas are there because they're sitting in front of a blank screen or sitting at the keyboard going, I got nothing.
Yeah.
Maybe they need to co-write. Maybe they need to sit with someone who's got that first idea.
I think co-writing for me was everything. Like every song, pretty much nearly every song I've written ever has been co-written.
Wow.
And especially when you're starting out, like I think you can get so frustrated. Like how do I, like even knowing how to begin is so hard. But I think co-writing and the conversations like that you have as you start make the songwriting so much easier. Particularly if you're like, you're writing a church song. It's like, well, what have you been learning about God? And you can talk about it so much that the theme is so obvious. Yeah. That when it comes to actually sitting down and playing it, the bank of words and thoughts are all there. But yeah, it's hard. But I would encourage anyone who's listening that you just you have to put yourself out there. It's uncomfortable, but you have to put yourself out there with other people who do the same thing, and you have to like kind of just devote time to it and I found for me, I would just put my phone down and put a voice memo on and just play for like 30 minutes, not even think about that it's recording, close it, get on with my day. And maybe in a couple of days later, I'll listen back to it and I'm like, oh, wow, that's actually better than I didn't even think about it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's strange. And you can hear things like, oh, I didn't know I did that. That's cool. That's helpful. Nice. Yeah.
Okay. Can I ask you this?
Yeah.
What's the quickest song you've ever written, like from start to finish.
Okay.
You don't have to remember the title, but like, you know, talk about that when you're like, I started and I'm just done. And then maybe the longest where you started it and you had to keep revisiting it.
Yeah. The first one that comes to mind is a song called Alive.
Yep.
That was probably the first song that I ever wrote, like kind of for church.
Yep.
So it's for Hillsong Young and Free on the first album. That song, which I wrote it with a friend called Alex Pappas.
Yep.
And that was like 30 minutes. Okay. The whole song was finished. That was insane. At that time, I was 19.
Right.
And I had never written anything so as complete as that song to that point.
Right.
That was the first kind of
this
song.
This is going to be easy.
Yeah, I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
I still look back at that and going, that was insane. Because that song has gone on to do amazing things.
Yeah.
More than we ever thought in that room. Like we were, you know, in his studio apartment, and like we didn't have we didn't know how to record anything. We just did it on. He had this old crappy electric guitar.
Yeah.
And we just like wrote it like that.
So cool.
And we had no idea that we'd be singing it in church. So all of that was, I feel like felt like a slipstream.
Yeah.
People say that it's like, oh, God gave me the song.
Yeah.
It felt like that because I don't know how. I still listen to that and I go, I don't know how we wrote that. I still try to write songs that do the same thing to this day, and there was no formula, just happened. So that song would be the easiest. The hardest song would be a song called Whole Heart.
Okay.
Which is on a United record.
Beautiful song.
Yeah, which I wrote with Joel Houston.
Yeah.
And that was the hardest song I've ever written in my life.
Okay.
Because we both deliberated over the lyrics for a year, like back and forth. But it wasn't taking breaks, coming back to it. It was like every day for nearly a year. I think we had like 8 sets of lyrics for that song, or more. And it just was the note. He has a note on his phone that he showed me recently, and you could scroll it for 2 minutes.
No way.
It was just, And I think there is that point too where you start getting in your head and you're overthinking things. Yeah, you know, what ended up happening was we finally, after 8 months or so, had gotten to a point where it's like, all right, this is what works.
Yeah.
And then the day, like 2 days later, we recorded it, and he had subbed out every lyric and rewrote the whole thing again the day of the recording. And then
Perfect.
it was insane. So that was a tough one.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what happens with the stuff that gets cut down on the editing room floor? Do you ever have things like that becomes part of another idea, or?
Yeah, sometimes, but not. I don't know if that song. I don't know. I have to go back. I'm sure there's stuff in there, but a lot of the times, like I'll have ideas that don't work.
Yep.
And I'll try to find another space for them later on. But I don't know. It's strange. I think you just learn to like let it go.
Yeah.
And if it comes back naturally, then awesome.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, you have such a unique songwriting story because you were writing, but from the sounds of it, like, hey, you got that song. Can you do it this Friday? Like, and then more and more frequency. So you get to find out almost immediately if it works or not.
Yeah.
How helpful is that in the process?
So helpful. Like, that was a huge, to me, both having like leaders and pastors who like believed in me and the rest of the younger free guys. Like we were younger, and the fact that they even let us get on the stage with no kind of experience, I think back to that now and I go, you don't know it at the time.
Yeah.
But now I'm like, oh my gosh, like they took such a risk on us. Like we had no idea what we were doing.
Right.
So there's that part of it. But then I think getting up on stage and, playing a song and seeing the room just be like, it's almost like like no one has to tell you it didn't work.
Right.
You just know.
Right.
And I think that was very much our kind of experience, like especially with Young and Free, like every song that we had written, it was like, all right, we'll do it this Friday night at youth group. And if it was a fast praise song, we'd be like, are people jumping?
Yeah.
They didn't jump.
Yeah.
Okay, that's not going to work.
Right.
It didn't move the room. Okay.
Yeah.
And so very quickly it takes away this like, oh, I think this idea is good. I think that idea is bad. Like there was no finger pointing. There's no like, you're not a good writer. It's just like, all of us have this common goal to write a song that works, connects people with God.
Yeah.
You can see it. You don't have to talk about it. It's obvious. All right.
Yeah.
And then you try it again. And that was really amazing that we had, having these weekly meetings where it felt like the youth group, it was
like
the youth
a little
group
workshop.
Song. Yeah, it was. And so many songs we changed because of those experiences, which was awesome. And I'm so aware that that's not everyone's experience, you know, so I'm grateful for us that we had that.
Do you ever feel as a songwriter, like the room's wrong? This is a good, like, do you ever feel like, man, they're not getting it?
Yeah, sometimes.
Yeah.
But it very rarely are they wrong?
Right.
You know, there's a guy at Hillsong called Ruben Morgan.
Yep.
And he's written like some of the greatest songs, you know, like
a hymnal's worth of songs.
Yes. Like I look up to him so much, and he's one thing about him that's so wild is like, he'll write songs. I mean, he's written some of my favorite worship songs of all time, you know, Mighty to Save and all those, you know, what's my favorite one? The one, Eagle's Wings.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Lord, I Give You My Heart. And there's sometimes he'll write songs and, you know, we would be workshopping them and be like, oh, it's good. I don't know if this is going to work. And then he'll sing it the first time within 10 seconds, singing it at church, the entire congregation have never heard it before. Arms high. Like, he has this ability to know. And so I think when you see that, I'm always encouraged to go, okay, the room knows.
Yeah.
Ruben's done it for a long time.
Yeah.
He can read the room.
Yeah.
Okay. There definitely is
There's
something.
a trust that goes both ways.
Yes.
Kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, completely.
Okay. So what about the opposite side of that? Are you ever surprised? You're like, oh, I was wrong. I didn't think this was going to hit the way it has.
Yeah. More times than not.
Okay.
Yeah. 100%.
So you go in like, kind of, we'll see.
Yeah. Yeah. And I even like sometimes other people have written songs and, you know, I'd be like, I don't know if that's going to work.
Yeah.
And then I'm completely wrong. And I love that feeling. Because then I'm like, okay, that's good. Because I don't know everything.
Right.
But there's definitely been songs that I've been a part of. And I'm like, it's a good song. But I don't. And then it takes off. And you're like, oh, wow. And I think you need that in creativity and songwriting. You need to know that you don't know everything. Because in the moment you feel like you're like, oh, I can write the best song. I think you lose the ability to write any good songs because you're leaving out the God part of it.
Right.
You know? And so I think in church music particularly, like, God can take any song. Like this song, I remember hearing the song Waymaker.
Yep.
And I was just like, this is the worst song.
Yeah.
And a few of us felt that way.
It's never going to work.
Yeah, it's never going to work. I remember someone did it one time at this youth conference in Sydney, and I was like, ugh.
Yeah.
I hate the melodies. I don't like. I like what it's saying. I wouldn't say it like that.
Yeah.
And it's one of the biggest songs of all time.
Right.
And I was so wrong.
Yeah.
And that's happened to me a million times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had a few things like outside of creativity that have been like technology things. I remember when I was like a young youth pastor.
Yeah.
I had been pastoring for a few years when SMS started coming in, like the old style where you're sitting the same button over and over.
Yeah.
Remember this one girl in our youth group was like, I'm in so much trouble. I've racked up my phone bill. And I thought, how many long distance calls have you taken? She's like, no, I'm sending text messages. And it was like hundreds of dollars that month that she had over texted. And I just remember saying to a few people, I'm like, that's never going to take off. What a dumb idea. Like, who's going to sit and write something when they could just call? Yeah. That's why you have a phone in the first place. And I was wrong on that one.
Yeah, but I understand that.
Yeah, it's kind of refreshing, though, not ever being the smartest guy in the room.
Yeah.
It's a nice feeling to be reminded.
Yeah. I would love to go back to that time, though.
Oh, yeah.
Phone calls are so much better.
Absolutely. So I go, obviously a little bit further back. My youth group experience, like when I was young, you had a house phone.
Yeah.
And if, your mom was on the line,
you can't
it's a busy tone. Like kids now don't even know what that is. But I lived in a small town. And so you just be like, I'll just get in my car and I'll drive around until I run into one of my friends. Like that's how I grew up. Like they're probably at the lake. There's only a few different beaches they could be at. And we'd get in our cars and we'd go find each other. And like simpler times. Simpler times.
I was on the end of it.
Okay.
But I do remember like dial-up internet. Okay. Like if I need to go on the internet, nothing else can happen in the house. Right. No phone calls can be made.
Mom.
Yeah. But I love that.
Yeah, simpler time for sure.
So good.
And creatively, also a simpler time in that you had like a local expression to work things out in, and nothing else mattered. And now you got people writing stuff, putting it directly out and getting instantaneous feedback for or against. Yeah. And then deleting the video because it didn't get enough shares or whatever that looks like. Yeah. How do you speak to and help a young creative kind of keep it in-house. Like everything you've talked about is the value of writing for a group, getting that feedback, having leaders who stake their credibility on you, speak life into you, having a friend who's going to, teach you chords.
Yeah. That's a great
How
question.
do you help when you got a generation coming up that's like, oh, there's stardom on the other side of this. Like there's careers on the other side of this.
Yeah. I mean, it's such a good question. I think about this all the time. Even now, music's changed so much. Like, just even the way that you consume music. Like,
totally,
it would be hard to know a full song anymore because you just see the chorus on Instagram 100 times, and then you're like, oh yeah, I know that chorus. I don't know the song.
Yeah, we used to know albums.
Yeah, we used to know albums, and I used to love putting on. I mean, I'm not that old, but I did have a Discman.
Yeah,
and I remember putting a disc in, got on my way to school, having headphones, and listen, I'd be like timing it so that I could listen to the whole album as I got to school. And I don't know whether we have that same appreciation anymore. Right. But I think there's two sides to it. I think technology changing does kind of put a pressure on those local. It changes the way local things work for sure. I mean, the benefit of it is that you do get live, active feedback. You kind of get an audience that doesn't know your context at all, who are giving completely objective advice. You put a song out there and it sucks. Right. They're going to tell you in the comments that it sucks. Yeah. Or if it's good, it gains traction and goes viral, and that's awesome too. I think, but it does. I don't know. I think I have found that for me, I've needed something to write for. That's always been, because I could just go home and write a song about anything. Right. But I have loved that church has given me something bigger than myself to write for. Right. And I've loved that it can be the song of a community. And I think with Instagram and, these, I guess, tech and TikTok and all that, it takes away that human part a little bit. It's like, it's very kind of just like, does this work? No. Okay, cool. What about this? Yes. What if I play this 27,000 times to you? Will you like it then? Because you can't get it out of your head. So I don't know. I think I feel like for young people, it is still an amazing tool. Like, you can definitely find your voice doing that. And I don't know if not using it is the answer.
Absolutely. I think like all things technology, you can resist it or figure out how to cause it to serve you. Yeah. I mean, I'm conscious and aware of the fact that there will be AI written songs that will still work. You know what I mean? Like that is actually a good song. And then there will be songs, like has always happened throughout history, that broke rules. The Beatles broke all the musical rules, and it spoke to a generation. There'll always be that need for a person who just has a unique take. Yeah, wild times. It is wild.
I've heard some of the AI songs. Okay, and there's some like good ones, but I think people connect to the story more than the song, and I think that's the same in church music. Like, absolutely, you connect to the story of what the song did in a local community, or where it came from. It came from this situation, and this song now is the anthem of that season of someone's life. And I think when you have AI, it's not a real story. So totally, it could be a great catchy song, but it's like, how do you?
It's creating an outcome, but has no backstory.
Exactly, and I think the process is what people, and the heart. I hope the people. That's what people connect to.
Yeah. So. Let me ask you a very leading question, which isn't that fair of me.
No, but I like it.
You have had the opportunity, which I'm sure is humbling, that's the leading part, to lead songs that you've written across cultures, across continents, big venues, small venues. How do you handle the emotion of like, this was for our youth group, and now I'm in Brazil, and it's something for them too, and it's not the same thing necessarily, but it is something. Like, how do you steward that, which is now global, songs being translated?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I feel like, the church, being a part of Hillsong, there was always this global vision. And so things were very local, and the songs were written very much for the local, for our youth group. And we would specifically be like, okay, what's going on in the youth group? Let's write to that. Yeah. But we always knew very quickly, because that first album that we did, I had no idea that it would ever do.
Yeah.
I thought it was literally just for our church, and everyone else did too. And so very quickly when it kind of went everywhere, to me, it felt like it was really exciting that people were connecting with, I guess, the message of Young and Free at the time. Like, oh, everyone's going through this. This is something that unifies us. Like these themes and talking about God in this way, actually something that can unify people. So that, I've always loved that part of it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of imposter syndrome,
right.
You know, particularly when you're 19 years old and you've only led in front of, 1,000 people max.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you're traveling and you're playing in front of a lot of people. You kind of, there's a lot of questions like, why, what, how me? I don't know. And all of us are thinking that in the band. We're like,
totally.
We're like, what are we doing? Like, I was just working at Subway, or I was just cleaning dishes, and I'm going to go back and do that when I go home. But I think that, it was challenging for us. I think we learned a lot. It's very character building. There was things, because none of us planned for that to be what we did. It just happened. And we weren't, I don't think anyone in Young and Free had done like ministry school. Right. Except for one person, Pappas did. So, and people were doing, it's hard to explain, but for us, it really was not part of any of our plans at all. It just overnight it felt like, and then all of a sudden we're like, oh wow, now there's a responsibility, and we have, people are seeing us as leaders, and I didn't know that. So that was a big part of a lot of the things that we had to learn very quickly. Right. So yeah.
You're like, wait, I'm a celebrity?
I mean,
again, I'm not trying to overlead you, but it's a real thing.
Yes, it just felt like people were looking to us, and I was like, oh, I kind of look to you though. So that was a lot of the early years, and I still struggle with that. Still is something I'm like, okay, the songs have done more than I could have ever imagined. I think the songs go and have a life of their own, and they do things. Songs that people have written, I don't even know their names, have changed my life. Totally. And if I knew them, I'm like, oh, you wrote that song? You were part of changing my life. And you do put this, I've done it myself. Like, wow. Like, and I think I've had to learn, like, God is in control of what happens to the music. And I'm put in this position for a reason, obviously. And I didn't control that. I didn't know that could happen. So I mean, I don't know if it's answering your question, but I've definitely come to a place where I'm like, okay, I know this is where God wants me. Because he wouldn't bring me here if it wasn't that way. So but it is deeply humbling, truly. Like it's still, I remember being in front of a big room for the first time. We did this conference at Radio City Music Hall. And I remember looking out and I'm like, how on earth did this happen? Now I still feel that way every time when I lead worship. Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So you've already kind of spoken to what I'm going to ask, but how do you stay grounded? Like, what are some of the tools you use? Obviously, it's maybe God given that you continue to feel humbled. It's probably also an act of choice. But what are some of the tools you use to stay in that place and to stay grounded? Yeah,
it's not conscious all the time. You definitely struggle with that. I think anytime you're on a platform or in front of people, an ego comes with it, right? Of course, and I think that is learning how to manage it has been an ongoing thing. But Australians are so insane. It's like I go home and no one cares about anything. Like Australia has that tall poppy syndrome. So you go above the rest, you get chopped back down. And I think in a lot of ways, some of that's really unhealthy. Yeah. But it's definitely taught me to go, it really has nothing to do with what you do. Right. Like it's about who I am. And my family, like, my dad doesn't like go to church or anything like that. He doesn't really understand what I do. I think he loves it now, but I would go home. He's like, "Oh, how is it?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's good." And my dad's is the most supportive person that I know, but he doesn't have a context, doesn't understand it. Wow. So I've always had that. So I never felt like, wow, I'm a legend, because I'd go back to Sydney and we would be serving 5 to 7 days a week at church, leading worship 10 times a week. Like it was never, it felt like there was a lot of things. And Hillsong was really great at that. Was like, hey, you're doing that. It's great. Yeah. But you're just one of the team when you come back. Yeah. And I think for a lot of us, I think that was really healthy, because it didn't give you time to go, oh, I'm awesome.
I'm someone. Yeah.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, like, people are only connecting to what we're doing because of the God that they see in what we do. And that, even when we do events and you meet people afterwards, they don't really care about you per se.
Right.
They just want to know about what you know of God.
Right.
And so I always remember that, like, we'd get up there and it's like, it doesn't even matter if we stuff up tonight when we're playing, you know, because it's literally our only job here is just people are coming to meet with God. That's it. And it could be me, it could be anyone. It doesn't have, it could be literally anyone.
Yeah.
And we've seen that because at church as well, like, your position was never like locked. Like, you're not like, oh, Aodhan's on everything. It's at any moment, someone else could just be doing that. Yeah. And that was just the culture we lived in.
Yeah. So you're no longer in Australia.
No longer in Australia.
So tall poppy syndrome in America kind of inverts real quickly.
It does.
And you're no longer in maybe as formative of a structure with serving 10 times a week in Hillsong across campuses and locations. So how do you continue to seek that out? That, like, I've still got my feet on the ground. Yeah. I'm still just that guy, you know?
Yeah, it's definitely different in America.
Yeah.
I think people in America are way more like, they celebrate your wins, and you can definitely feel like this inflated sense of self. 100%. I think in a lot of ways, like, if I was honest, some of that had been healthy for me because I think I began to doubt even my calling sometimes in a lot of the staying grounded. I almost...
You're getting ground down.
I legitimately would feel like that sometimes. I'd be like, I guess it doesn't even matter if it's me or not. Like, and I would start to, but I really did believe that. I was like, well, I don't have to do that. And then people were like, no, but there's a gift on your life, so you do. And I'm like, yeah, but okay, but I don't though. And I would start to lose a lot of confidence because of that. And I think coming to America in a lot of ways was, hey, dude, you're amazing. Like, what you do is great. And that helped a lot for me in just getting my confidence back in what I do. Awesome. But I also, I haven't been doing much like on like a public level in the last couple of years. And I think that's been really good for me. Like we, Young and Free, up until COVID, we put out an album and I was like, this is the best thing we've done. We were touring, it was nonstop. And I was like, this is going to be really exciting. Then COVID happened. And then since then till now, we haven't done anything. And it's been really good for me, just being able to like, okay, what's important? That's been helpful for sure.
That's amazing. So what are you most excited about right now then?
I'm working on my own thing.
Okay.
My own music, which is really, really exciting. I have been thinking about that for many years and finally have kind of made this worship record that I'll put out this year.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. It feels good. And it's nice to, it's been highly collaborative. So that's important to me because I don't love doing anything on my own. But it feels nice to just do something that feels right for me. That's awesome. This year. That's what I'm excited about.
And now you got to seek out rooms. Well, I guess you probably have pre-recording, like seek out rooms and places and local church environments where you're like, this works?
I've got to do that. I haven't done that yet.
Oh man,
I might do it tonight.
I hope you do. It's going to be great. We're ready, man.
I'm pumped.
That's awesome.
How
many songs have you written? If you knew the number, it'd be weird. You're like, oh, exactly. But I think a lot of people go, okay, Aodhan King, he's written these 15 songs. But behind those 15, there's a catalog of songs you never want anyone to hear.
Oh, I couldn't even tell you.
What would be the frequency? You mentioned before, you're like, I could have 20 ideas a day. What do you do with those? Like, do you have a system?
If things move me, I'll work on it. There would be, I don't know, thousands. Probably. Maybe like right now there would be close to 100 that I've finished that I haven't done anything with. This record, there'll be some. But that was always how we learned, like at Hillsong when we were writing, was like just write. You know, and when we'd come to an album, we'd be selecting, 12 songs from probably 100. So that was just, so there's a lot.
I feel like people put such heavy stakes on everything they do.
Yes.
You know, well, if it's worship writing, they're like, I have to write a song by this date and it's got to be perfect. If they're preaching, they're like, this Sunday's message or this Friday night message to a youth ministry is everything.
Yes.
There has to be that that room for, this one was great, this one was fine.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah.
You know, there's some that are fantastic, and then there's some that are part of the process.
Yeah. Yeah, I find that most of them are part of the process.
Right.
And they lead to something, and you don't know what that something is.
Right.
But it's like turning on a tap and like all that gunk coming out, and then finally the clean water comes. I think that's the analogy that songwriters always use. It's like sit at the piano, just write, and kind of get it out.
Yeah.
And then you'll get to the good stuff.
I think it's cool. Like you look at David in the scripture, end of his life, like, oh man, he led with integrity and and skill of hand. Yeah. But his development of that was like, I don't know what's going to happen today. Lions, bears, giants.
Yeah.
Delivering cheese for my dad to the army. Like he didn't wake up going, today's the day I'm going to change the world. He just had to be ready. Yeah. I guess it's similar creatively. Like today's not the day to write a hit song. Today's the day to be creative.
Yes.
And to stay present.
100%.
That's amazing.
And I think what's cool is like there's people that are writing songs that are changing the world now that didn't ever write anything before that for 20 years. And I think that's really encouraging. That there's no age limit. There's no rule book. It just like I said, I think Waymaker is a great example because most corporate songwriters would have been like, oh yeah.
Not sure if you're following the form properly.
Yeah. And then it just shakes everyone's kind of pre-notion of what works. And so I think that's as a songwriter and to songwriters and to anyone creative, it's like, just do what feels honest to you in the moment.
Amazing.
And you don't know what will happen.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Dude, I love that.
Yeah, I love this chat.
So absolutely. So let me ask you to put the kind of consultative hat on.
Okay.
Or the analyst, if you will.
Yeah.
Yesterday you were in Netherlands. Tomorrow you're going to be somewhere else. You're right now with us in Canada.
Yeah.
So you have this kind of 30,000 foot view of the church right now or the worship culture in movements. What are some trends that you're noticing?
People want to sing the word of God more than ever, I feel.
Wow.
That seems to be the biggest thing. And I think there is definitely a gathering around even just like worship songs that sing about God.
Yes.
As opposed to what God's done in me.
Right.
It's like God, you're worthy.
Yeah.
Like, not because of what you do in me, but just because you are. Like, that has definitely been, which I think is an amazing trend.
Beautiful trend, yeah.
And I think people are more undignified than ever. And I probably that could be because the world is so divided at the moment that I think Christians are going, it's not this like lukewarmness anymore. Not that I think that was ever a trend, but I think there's this push towards, I'm a Christian.
Right.
I'm going to be undignified.
Maybe cool wasn't it?
Yeah, I don't think so. Yeah. I think what's cool now is like, which I think was always cool, but now more than ever, I think that's true.
Wow.
And what other trend would I say? I mean, I don't know. I'm trying to think. I just did this conference in Rotterdam, and it was 15,000 young people, and I think people are looking for community a lot. Like I was looking around even when I was leading, and it's just like groups of people together. Like, I guess different youth groups from around traveling together. And even when I was meeting people afterwards, I'm like, the one thing that stood out to me was like people are just longing so much for community, and I think the church has to be more of that.
Right.
And maybe COVID was a moment where that felt harder to kind of to see, that people are flooding to like those spaces more than I feel like I've seen before, which is really, really cool.
It's cool that you mentioned that in scripture, specifically New Testament, it feels like when it talks about singing, it's definitely God honoring, but it's like other encouraging. It's like we need to be together to encourage one another with spiritual songs.
Yes.
So that's a really cool thought, because in a more isolated time, which we've all kind of come through over these last few years. Yeah. I talked to a lot of people like, I already listen to worship music. I can already grab great sermons somewhere. Yeah. But they were missing that element of like, I need to be encouraged by a person, who I can reach out and touch. I need to smell the breath of the person behind me as they're 100%. Shouting out to the Lord. Like that's a pretty cool cool thing.
Yeah.
Do you feel like, lame way to put it, but it's back, like that type of setting?
I think so.
Because I feel like for a while it was like, you just stream everything, we're good.
Yeah.
Find content where you want it, and that's good.
Yeah, I think completely, because during COVID for us, we didn't have church for pretty much 2 years.
Yeah.
Because Sydney was really strict. Yeah. And then when I moved over here, it was still so restricted as well. I moved to the States. And, I think there's a lot of people that, myself included, were like, well, as church is not happening, like, well, we should still gather and have dinner parties and stuff, which is great. And we talk about the Bible or whatever. But I feel like there's nothing like kind of coming around like a church, and coming around like believers, and being in this place where it's not just about the conversation we're having here at a table, but it's about the bigger conversation.
Yes.
And I think it's definitely back.
Yeah. The anthem's back.
The anthem's back.
Which I'm pretty excited about.
Yeah, me too.
So last question, maybe around, songwriting, creativity. I want to honor your time as well. It's like, we've been running for 3 hours. Okay.
No, I love it.
No, but there's certain songs of worship that you write just for you. They're devotional.
Yeah.
And there's certain ones that are congregational.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a methodology of determining which is which?
Not well.
Yeah.
I know when it's going to work congregationally and when it's not.
Yeah.
I've always, like I said, I think when I started writing, it was, for me, it was very much a personal thing. Like it was my way of talking to God. Like I wasn't a great prayer. I felt like my prayers would be me sitting at the piano and playing and singing. And so I have had it, like, even we talk about, there's this comeback to like singing about God.
Yeah.
Like for me, those songs are kind of harder for me to write sometimes. Like I believe all the things that they say, but the way that I learned to write was very personal. Like, hey God, I've had a bad day.
Yeah.
And so, I can distinguish what the difference is. I find them a lot harder to write, because I have always had to put myself in the song. Right. Like even like we talk about David, but like all the songs were so personal, and like God, I suck. These, I've always kind of resonated with that worship. Like I am weak, you are strong. Like I had to. That's how I've written. I need to put myself in there to even just articulate how good God is. I need to talk about how sucky I can be sometimes. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, dude, I just want to thank you personally.
Yeah.
You've written songs that have changed my life.
Oh wow. Okay.
And people that I love, and you've led worship moments in our home amongst my kids.
That's
awesome. Like, I resonate with that. That makes sense to me, putting it that way. And I love hearing. I didn't know that I would hear, but the thought that having some confidence build was a good thing.
Yeah.
Like, that's a pretty cool and refreshing thing to hear. Yeah. Because so often we're kind of inundated with gotta stay humble. But if it's not true humility, then it's just another weird concoction of pride. Mm-hmm. Like when Paul goes, I'm the worst sinner. He's not looking for right, guys? Yeah. He's not looking for them to go, no, Paul, you're not the worst.
Yeah.
But sometimes like that's how we find humility, or like find that equilibrium.
Yes.
So it's just super refreshing to hear that encouragement has ministered to you and meant something to you. And I'm grateful that you'd be here and provide now an encouraging environment for us.
Oh, thank you.
It's making a difference.
Thank you.
I can say without any hesitation, I'm pretty excited to hear the stuff that you've been working on.
I'll send it to you.
Yeah. Thanks, man. It's awesome.
You.
Love you, dude.
I love it. That was a good dad.
That was a good one. That was a good one.
Dude, love it. Thank you.